Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into one of the biggest questions you can possibly ask. Are you more than just your physical body? We're going to explore some incredible source material that takes us on a wild ride from ancient philosophy all the way to top secret psychic espionage.
So let's just get right to it. This is the big one. Can your mind, your consciousness, your actual sense of self leave your body and go somewhere else? I know, it sounds like something straight out of a movie. But what if I told you that people have been seriously looking into this for thousands of years?
Okay, so to even begin to wrap our heads around that question, we need a map. And it turns out ancient cultures were like incredible map makers of the non-physical world. They didn't just see a body and a soul. No. For them, consciousness was way more complex, way more layered than that. And this is really the key idea we need to get. Forget that simple body and soul model. Instead, think of yourself as a whole system, a series of interconnected bodies or maybe dimensions, each one vibrating at a different frequency. You've got your dense physical body, sure, but that's just the beginning. Now check this out. This slide is just wow. It shows how startlingly similar these ancient maps were, even across totally different cultures. On the left, you've got the ancient Egyptian model. On the right, a very similar one from Eastern philosophy. Look at how the khot, or the physical corpse, lines up perfectly with the gross body. This wasn't just one culture's fantasy. It feels more like a shared human understanding of how we're put together. All right, so we've got this ancient blueprint, but what does it actually mean in the real world? Well, it leads us straight to this really bizarre but well-documented experience called astral projection. I mean, what happens when one of those non-physical layers decides to go for a stroll? And that's the term for it, astral projection. Early researchers in this field, guys like Sylvan Muldoon and Hereward Carrington, they weren't just sitting around theorizing. They were meticulously collecting stories, documenting first-hand accounts of this experience, where a person's awareness seems to literally detach from their body and travel around completely independently. And this quote just paints the perfect picture, right? This is the image that comes up again and again in their research. People from all walks of life described this tether back to their physical body, a shimmering, stretchy cord, often called the silver cord. It was like a lifeline, making sure the traveler could always find their way back home. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Ancient beliefs, silver cords, it all sounds a little out there, right? But what happens when you take all this mystical-sounding stuff and put it to the test in a controlled, scientific lab? Well, our source material points to one absolutely mind-blowing experiment that tried to do exactly that. Okay, picture this. It's 1973. You've got scientists at the super prestigious Stanford Research Institute, SRI, and they're exploring the absolute limits of human ability. They bring in this famous psychic, Ingo Swann, and they give him a target that is frankly impossible. Describe Jupiter for us. The catch? No human had ever seen it up close. The very first probe, Pioneer 10, was still months and millions of miles away. And the timing here, the timing is everything. Look at this. Swann's session, where he described everything he saw at Jupiter, was transcribed and recorded in April of '73. Then it was locked away. NASA's probes wouldn't send back the first real data for months, and in some cases, not for years. And this is where the story just gets nuts. Take a look at this side by side. Swann said, "I see a ring around the planet." Back then, every scientist in the world would have told you that only Saturn has rings. He was wrong. Except 6 years later, Voyager 1 confirmed it. Jupiter has a faint ring system. He talked about massive storms, hydrogen crystals, high levels of infrared radiation, all things that NASA probes later confirmed were absolutely true. I mean, let's just break that down for a second. The single most unbelievable claim, that Jupiter has rings, turned out to be correct. His description of the wild atmosphere? Confirmed. The specific chemical makeup he sensed? Confirmed. Seriously, how on earth do you explain this? So the really critical thing to get here is that this wasn't some vague, fuzzy prophecy. These were specific, measurable, falsifiable data points that he delivered before we had any way of checking them. You have to imagine being one of those scientists at SRI, looking at this data and being faced with evidence that somehow a human mind had just traveled millions of miles through space and brought back accurate intelligence. A discovery like that has absolutely staggering implications. And it leads us to the final and maybe the most unsettling part of this whole story. Because if a human mind can be a probe used for exploration, what else could it be used for? What happens when the intelligence agencies start paying attention?
This is the logical and kind of terrifying next step, isn't it? If you can send a mind out to gather information, could you send information into a mind? Could you influence someone's thoughts, their feelings, maybe even their actions from a distance? The source suggests this exact question kicked off decades of top-secret, shadowy research. And according to the text, what you're seeing here is just a taste of the alleged black-budget projects that popped up to explore all this. We're talking about programs with names like Montauk and Phoenix that supposedly looked into everything from psychic spying and remote viewing to remote influencing and full-on psychological warfare. And there's actually a name for this whole field: psychotronics. It's this bizarre intersection of physics, consciousness, and biology. And when you look at it in a military context, its goal is chillingly simple: to figure out how to turn the power of the human mind into a weapon. So we've gone from the soul maps of ancient Egypt all the way to the rings of Jupiter and deep into the shadows of secret government projects. The source material certainly doesn't give us all the answers, but it does leave us with one massive, lingering question. If consciousness can be a tool, who exactly is using it?